how do you perceive deficit financing, and how do you think it is impacting our economy here in Nigeria?
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, I want to recognize the presence of the other guest on the show. He has done justice to this topic extensively. But be that as it may, budget deficit is not bad in totality. Considering the kind of economy that we have, we are still an emerging economy. So definitely we cannot have a surplus budget or even a balanced budget at this time. So we still need maybe external borrowings, investment, FDIs to finance our budget. But be that as it may, looking at the budgets that the Appropriation Act that was presented to the National Assembly this week, on Wednesday, look at what I can say is that, a lot of these borrowings are not even into infrastructure development. At this moment, we just need to be factual. We need to state it the way it is. Our government are too extravagant in their spendings. Like the other guy said earlier on, I think sometimes last month the supplementary budget was passed by this same House of Assembly, and out of it, only 12% is going to infrastructure development. In econometrics, that is totally unacceptable. We can't be borrowing to finance recurrent expenditure. It is not acceptable. And this government is coming on a mantra of a renewed hope. I don't think we can achieve the renewed hope. A common Nigerian can achieve renewed hope with this kind of system. Yes, I know a lot of economists will say that Nigeria cannot be running a balanced budget at this moment, but the government need to cut down their spending tremendously. If the government actually cut down their spending, there are a lot of frivolities that needs to be cut off in the spendings of government. A common man on the street cannot afford a 3 square meal, and we have a president that is using these resources that is meant for you and I to be hosting hundreds of people on a daily basis. These are things that are not acceptable. A lot of us, we don't look at the nitty-gritty of the budget. We just look at the total figure and they'll be bamboozling over the figures. But if you look at all these things nitty-gritty, the costs they are using to feed even in the presidential villa is so outrageous. And you wonder, are these people doing a feast on a daily basis? And like my colleague has said, we need to invest on infrastructure. And in terms of investment in infrastructure, we don't need to time it to borrowing. There are a lot of developed economies that are ready to invest in Nigeria because they see the prospect in us. So why not bring in the equity? Why not bring in their expertise into our economy instead of borrowing? We borrow, and at the same time, imagine you borrow, you pay back the principal, and you still pay back the interest. Because if you look at the budget as well, there is an aspect that talks about the cost of servicing debt. In as much as in terms of percentage, this budget is doing far better than last year in terms of our deficit budget to the GDP. But be that as it may, the cost of dollar last year is not the same thing. There are a lot of things that this government needs to put in place. If I may say, there must be stability of the dollar, and the trust of the common man must develop in this government to have a very good renewed hope that we are expecting and all of us are anticipating.
You expect renewed hope. Now, Mr. Diron, still on you. Do you think there are specific sectors that really cause the government to go borrowing? Talking about the area of deficit financing. Is there a sector that this is more prevalent in? And what can be done, and what is the implication, right, of such sectors?
And well, the major sectors that I think that cost government more is in terms of the ministry, the defense, in terms of security, the Ministry of Works, and then Transportation and Housing. But basically, what we need to consider, number one, is the fact that, yes, this is the first fiscal year, full fiscal year of this government. A lot of people have invested in them coming into power. And we know whether we like it or not, governance is all about politicking. It is time to reward their cronies. So a lot of contracts will be going out, contracts that will never see the light of the day. The sectors that I think, like my colleague said, the security, yes, we are not saying that they should not invest in the security architecture of the country, but there are ways, it's not only in ammunitions, there are ways, intelligence. The Boko Haram fight is beyond carrying gun now. It's about intelligence. We need to invest in all of this, which will not cost us money. In terms of roads development, the trains, the infrastructure, basically, I can say that the previous administration has done a lot of work in that regard, and then this administration, we want to play on that. We want to level on that. Again, there are some other sectors that are suffering, I would say, in terms of this budget financing. The health sector is really, really lacking behind. The educational sector is nothing to write home about. A lot of these schools are not even good enough to produce a graduate, and they will say that the youth are the leaders of tomorrow. Is it the youth that you didn't invest in? So the government needs to look at what we are prioritizing. I'm not saying that the government should not invest in infrastructure, there should be road, but at the same time, education is the bedrock of any society. If we want to grow, a lot of the Jackpot syndrome is out there. A lot of people are leaving the country. It's just because we can't stop people from migrating. That's a known fact. But at the same time, let us create a standard for ourselves. In the good old days, the standards are there. So where have they gone? So they need to invest more in the health sector, in the education. Our hospitals are in comatose instead of just pushing all our resources. Because one of the reasons I think politicians do all these things is that they like to always do things that people will see and say and attribute it to the government. They want to do the road, like the Minister of Works has come out, he wants to do a coastal road from the east down to the south. You know, in as much as that is a laudable project, but is that what we need at the moment? Who are the people who are going to apply this road? Are people ready? Is there a business? Is there a viability of business? My colleague said earlier that at a point in time, it was cheaper to bring in goods from China than taking it to Kano. You know, all these things are things that we need to consider. The cost of doing business, we need to look at it. We need to SMEs, companies are leaving the country. So in as much as you are investing in roads, in defense, the defense architecture of the country, and also maybe the housing that we are seeing, which is a larger chunk of our budget. But we also need not to neglect the education, the healthcare. We should give priority to those areas as well.
How does deficit financing basically influence factors such as inflation, interest rate, and overall fiscal stability in the nation?
Well, in economics, in paper, the deficit budgeting does not have a direct influence on the rate of inflation, the interest rates, and stability. What matters most importantly is the economic performances based on some indexes that we use. We talk about the population, we talk about the purchasing power, we talk about the parity of people. In as much as, you know, the economy is still a growing one, we're most likely going to have a deficit budget for maybe the next 10, 20 years, as the case may be. But that does not mean that the life of individuals, the purchasing power of the people will not improve. That doesn't mean that the inflation rates will still be going high. There are some things that the government need to put in place, some policies they need to stand firm, like the volatility of the dollar. Some things has to done regarding that. You know, those are the policies of the government. the body language it goes beyond the body language. We need to see all these things happen. We need to see that these are the major things that have influence on the inflation rate, the interest rate. Since the resumption of the central bank governor, uh, Mr. Yemi Cardoso, I'm not sure if the Monetary Policy Committee has met. These are things that are not really good. And if they have, maybe only once, these are things that are not really good for the system. These are statutory meetings that needs to hold to determine the interest rates per month on a monthly basis. And if the committee is not meeting, there will be a kind of, vacuum in the space in that space. So in as much as we are still going to be having deficit budget over a long period of time, the purchasing power of the people needs to be increased. The value of the naira needs to appreciate by having a stability in the FX market. These are things that have direct countries like US, China, they have deficit budget as well, but their stability in terms of all these economic indices, the interest rate is stable, the inflation rate these are things that needs to be done. Our policies has to be put in place, and we must see that government are living by whatever they are saying.
Indeed. Now, do you also think that international factors, also play a role in this deficit financing generally?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. The country is a global village, and Nigeria is not existing in isolation. We do a lot of business in dollar, especially because of our oil. Our oil goes out. So definitely there's a lot of influence of the benchmark of the oil. For instance, I think the oil was benchmarked at $78 per barrel for this appropriation year. If, for instance, there is a fluctuation in the price of, or maybe we are not even able to meet up with our production per day. These are things as a result of what is happening in the international market. Maybe there is no demand, or maybe because of the peg that the OPEC has put on whatever we are producing. These are things that are very important, and they will have a direct influence on whatever we are getting from the revenue as far as that area is concerned. And if our projected revenue is not being met, definitely we are going down of a deficit in terms of the budget.
We would like to hear your final thoughts on this topic.
Yeah, well, basically what I would like to say on the final note is then, yeah, we need to build a system, and at the same time, government need to consciously and intentionally reduce their spending on things that doesn't really add to the economy. Governance is not about flamboyant life. A lot of people in this climb say that this democracy we are doing is very expensive, and I agree with them. This democracy, government needs to consciously reduce the money, the resources that goes into governance. Governance is all about, and one of the ways my brother said is that by making sure that we reduce human interference. When there are less human interference in government, a lot of things get build a system, and then also the government need to come up with a clear-cut policy. The medium and economic time framework, yeah, fantastic. But a lot of people, there's this Oronsaye report on the civil service. They need to work on that as well. A lot of paperwork, document, thesis, reports are pending that needs to be implemented. If all those things are done, I think Nigeria will be better for it, and you and I will have a good life to live.